Good morning from Zurich. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Tyler Brûlé. Coming up on today's program from Studio 4 here in Zurich, I have Andrew Mueller. I think you're somewhat fresh from Prague. Now you're here. Maybe just bring us up to speed. Much going on a little bit east of here. What are you seeing?
Well, indeed, I am just in from Prague. I was at the GlobeSec Forum where obviously the politicians, diplomats and soldiers were desperately short of talking points. Very, very little going on in the world, to be honest. There was much discussion of Iran and much more discussion of Ukraine, which we will doubtless come back to.
Indeed, we will. Also going to be getting the latest from Finland.
Finland shows the world how it's done and bans underage e-scooter driving. And Denmark wants US military bases on its soil. I'm Petri Burtsoff, Monocle's man in the Nordics, and I'll be bringing you the latest news from the region.
Plus, we're going to be talking about art here in Zurich, also in Basel. We have Noah Horowitz is coming. Also, Aurelia Rao from Bergos is here. Good morning. Very nice to see you. What's been happening this weekend? What's ahead?
Hi, Tyler. Good morning. Well, art. Here in Zurich, we are looking at the Zurich Art Weekend, and all the galleries are presenting their best and brightest. And next week, we'll all go to Basel for the art fair and various other happenings.
Very good. It's the 15th of June, 2025. Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday with Tyler Brûlé.
And good morning from a somewhat grey Zurich. Promise of sunshine a little bit later. Sunny faces around the table. I'm very happy to say Andrew Mueller is here, contributing editor, of course, the host of the Foreign Desk, Chris Cermak, our senior news editor around the table. Maybe we should just start, because good morning, gentlemen, first and foremost, but why are you here today?
You tell me, Tyler. No, I am here because I will be presenting the briefing and the daily from this studio all this week. I did a week of the Globalist from this studio here in Zurich earlier this year, which did involve me getting up very early every day.
So yeah, we readjusted the schedule for you.
I know, which was terrifying for me, and I hope less so for the listeners. But yes, it will be the briefing and the daily all this week. Looking forward to it very much.
Chris Cermak, good morning.
Good morning. I'm here to help Andrew with the hosting of the briefing and the daily by producing and inviting lots of guests in here together with Desi Bandley, who of course is right here in Zurich, but lovely to have her help and see her in person and you in person as well. It's great to be here in Zurich for a change.
Excellent. Why don't we jump in? We've also got our Nick Moniz in London. Nick, we're going to just go get Emma a coffee or something like that, and we're going to come to you in a moment. But many developments overnight, and really sort of by the minute. I mean, if you're looking at the monitors here in studio, we're seeing inbound missiles and outbound Iron Dome projectiles on screen right now. And you're just saying in the menu, you came from the GlobeSec Security Conference just now in Prague. For our listeners who are not familiar with GlobeSec, maybe tell us what was happening there, but also what were the defining conversations?
GlobeSec is it's an extraordinary event, really, which we've been attending as the Foreign Desk for a few years now. This is the second. It was in Bratislava for many years. It relocated to Prague last year, and it does have, unsurprisingly, a very European focus. It's the much more where Munich, for example, in February is very transatlantic. This tends to focus on Europe and Central and Eastern Europe in particular, which means that for the last 3 or 4 years, it's basically been a conference about Ukraine. But yes, there were things definitely starting to shift. You could tell on day one. And I did ask a former leader of a European country if perhaps all these things we were seeing in the Middle East, like non-essential personnel being relocated from US embassies, might be a bit of theatrical positioning ahead of the next round of talks. And he just shook his head and he said, I really don't think so. You don't do that unless you're extremely serious. And it was really interesting. He just said it is relocating embassy staff and families at short notice. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's massively disruptive. Everybody hates it, and unless you're extremely serious, you just don't even think about it. This is a largely European affair. Did you feel that there was a leading voice? Of course, this is a bit the crisis of our time in Europe in terms of geopolitical leadership. But did anyone impress you, or did you feel that anyone was owning the narrative when you were there? This year, not so much. I think possibly because it's just a couple of weeks ahead of the NATO summit. There was a bit of a drop-off in what you might think of as principles versus the previous few years we've been there. There was a notable dearth of prime ministers, foreign ministers, etc. But the Czech government was unsurprisingly well represented. We did renew acquaintances with Jan Lipavsky, their foreign minister, and he did talk about a worry that I think besets a lot of Central and Eastern Europe now, which is the potential reach and potential influence of that slightly pro-Putin populist right wing. They do, of course, have elections coming up in the Czech Republic later this year. The polls look dishearteningly good for Andrej Babiš, who is their local Trumpist tycoon. And, you know, I was just in, as listeners may be aware, was just in Moldova a couple of weeks ago, going in and out of Ukraine, and they have similar concerns there in Moldova about an election they're facing at around the same time as the Czechs.
News editor Chris Cermak, what has caught your eye? Either newspapers on the continent, back in the UK, anywhere else in the world as well. What should we be
again,
today?
As Andrew was saying in the mini, it's not as if there isn't a lot going on at the moment, is there, Tyler? I've been actually watching the US because, of course, in addition to what's happening in Iran, between Iran and Israel, and Andrew at Globsec, there has been this parade in the United States on Saturday that was juxtaposed with a series of protests. So Donald Trump was celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Army, and at the same time you had hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets protesting Donald Trump's government under a No Kings protest. And in addition to that, we're also following live blogs all across the U.S. newspapers at the moment is this manhunt that is continuing for the suspect in the killing of a Minnesota lawmaker, the Democratic State Representative Melissa Hortman. So there's been an incredible barrage of news out of the US while we've also been hearing everything happening in Israel and Iran. I was kind of watching a little bit of the parade last night, and you felt like even on something like CNN, you didn't really know what to talk about, right? Because it was just so many different aspects going into this that you're trying to weave it all together into some kind of narrative, which is very tricky.
Let's jump back to Washington, Andrew. Just before we went on air, we were talking about the pageantry, maybe the lack of maybe people gathered around for this 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. We had, of course, tanks and armored personnel carriers came in by train from Texas all over the United States. I sort of fired this up. I guess it was sort of, supper time, U.S. time when this started yesterday. You weren't there, but from your perch and maybe your room here in Zurich, what did you make of it?
It was a slightly bemusing spectacle, and you can always read too much into things, and it's always good to beware of wishful thinking. But I couldn't help suspect that some of the people charged with staging this event were having a little bit of fun with it. There is a phrase which I have heard many times in military circles called malicious compliance, when you go along with the orders you're given, because what choice do you have? You're a soldier, but you kind of interpret them. So you can say, yes, I did what I was told, but you've sort of put your own spin on it. If you've seen the footage of the soldiers shuffling along in fatigues, it was not the sort of full dress uniform and sharp lockstep that I think Donald Trump may have been looking forward to. And among the soundtrack, I could not help but notice somebody had slipped in Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival, which is, of course, a protest song about the sons of rich families who skipped the draft during the Vietnam War. There's two possible explanations. One is that somebody just not very bright thought, oh yeah, that's that song you hear in all those Vietnam films, we should stick that in. The other explanation, which I for one am going to go with, is that somebody thought, yeah, okay, I'm having this, and just thought people will notice. People who know will know. I'm
also sort of wondering, we've got, when Bastille Day comes along, of course, this was not the model. Of course, we have pageantry all over the world of a military sort. This was a bit of an inspiration, of course, for Donald Trump. So will he be sending potentially more producers to have a really hard look at the fact that this is how you do things? But, you sort of come down to pageantry as well. You're talking about sort of the U.S. Army. Okay. Of course, they've got helicopters, etc. But I think to do this well, I mean, you need fighter planes going overhead. You need sort of the I would say sort of the full spectrum of U.S. forces. You should have had sort of a Coast Guard cutter on wheels, maybe, or something else, just to make something of it. But anyway, Chris, just from your post and watching this, of course, much was made of it. But in a way, also much of it was also overshadowed by, of course, what is happening, east of here anyway.
Well, I think when you talk about the parade, the interesting thing, of course, about this is, on the one hand, it was the 250th anniversary. They were planning for this for a long time, to have some sort of celebration, but they hadn't planned a parade. That was something that came in with Donald Trump, which is why it was a little bit more of a truncated planning thing. And I have to say, as an American watching that, one thing that I think gets lost maybe for me is we've always been a very patriotic bunch. So to your point about sort of Donald Trump going to Bastille Day, I think there was a little bit too much in my mind made of this idea that, oh, this is Donald Trump trying to have the military parade of the Vladimir Putins of this world. This was the 250th anniversary of the army. And so it's worth sort of not forgetting that. And also, to go further east if you want, what's interesting is, I think when you've looked at some of the coverage of this, in the U.S., of course, you have many papers that were focusing on the protests and this idea that, Donald Trump is becoming something of an autocrat and what that represents with the parade. If you go to somewhere like the Baltic states, they were actually quite happy with the show of force from the United States, because they want to see the United States involved with a strong military and so on and so forth. And to bring it even further to eastwards, I think when you look at what's happening in Israel and Iran, I was looking at the German papers this morning, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, what do they have right at the top of their front page? It all comes down to Donald Trump. So even when it comes to something like Iran and Israel, the focus very much still is on what is Washington going to do? What is Donald Trump going to do to stop or fuel some of these crises around the world?
Let's stay in the region, the airspace between Tel Aviv and Tehran. Of course, many newspapers, Andrew, and various outlets, of course, raising this question this morning, who's going to blink? Is this just going to be a series of night bombardments across both, of course, rhetoric out of Israel as well, that we will be witnessing Iran and Tehran burn, etc. Does this ratchet it down? Do we have a sense of, of course, backroom diplomacy happening right now to really, of course, turn off the taps in a way? Because as you were just saying, I was actually in Bahrain earlier in the week. You already saw this mobilization of people leaving the region, which, as you were saying earlier, that this does mean something.
It does mean something, and you're quite right, I think, to isolate the question of who is going to blink, because that is the key one, except I think it has been made clear, and not for the first time in Israel's history, that it is not going to be Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has, I think, seen this as a chance. He's seen this sort of ongoing crisis since October 7th, 2023, as the chance to settle Israel's accounts with all of its antagonists. And in doing so, he is, and I feel I should always make clear when I'm talking about things like this, that what I'm saying is not necessarily an endorsement of the strategy and tactics being pursued by Israel. I'm merely pointing out that this is what Israel has always done. They have always struck first, and they have always struck hard, because their view on the prospect of Iran with a nuclear weapon has always been that if you proceed from the assumption that Israel's purpose, the reason for Israel to exist, is that it is a safe, defendable haven for the Jewish people, then as Israel sees it, if Iran has a nuclear weapon, if the Islamic Republic of Iran has a nuclear weapon, Israel ceases to be that place. Therefore, that prospect is intolerable, and that applies to all of Israel's potentially difficult neighbors. And that is why they bombed Iraq's reactor in 1981, they bombed Syria's reactor in 2007, they took preemptive action in 1967 and 1973 to forestall what would have been existential threats to Israel. They are doing with admittedly newer technology and greater reach, they are doing what they've always done.
On that, and I'm thinking a little bit about, again, what we've been hearing, in of course press conferences, and I'm talking about out of Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem. This idea that there should also be regime change as well. Is there a playbook for this? Because again, we've seen regime change in many countries in that neighborhood over the last 2 decades, and it doesn't always go so well either.
Well, it doesn't, but it is a vulnerable moment for the Islamic Republic, as they will well know. They well know that there are many, many millions of Iranians who, while I'm sure are not enjoying their country being attacked, because nobody enjoys that, would not be at all displeased by the removal of the mullahs and the Revolutionary Guard Corps and everything that has run Iran since 1979. I mean, the optimistic scenario, which a couple of people did posit with, I think, varying degrees of leaden sincerity at Globsec, was, we could end up with this scenario of Benjamin Netanyahu, the inadvertent liberator of the Middle East and Persia. If you look at the results of Israel's actions over the last year in particular, Hamas barely exists. Hezbollah has been significantly hampered, to say the very least. Bashar al-Assad is in exile in Moscow. The Houthis have been somewhat, at least, defanged, and now, at least as the Israelis see it, they are taking it to the head of the snake, if you will.
Andrew Mueller, it's just 10:20 here in Zurich, 9:20 back in London, where our Nick Moniz, our design editor, is standing by. Nick, I'm not going to get your take on the Middle East. You can pile in if you'd like, but I know that you're going to be packing your bag very soon. I'm going to be meeting you up in Copenhagen because it's 3 days of design. Good morning, by the way.
Good morning. I've just fetched Emma her coffee, so she's signaling for another one, but I think maybe more important that we talk about 3 days of design right now.
Yes. Okay. Well, why don't we? Maybe set this up, because this is 3 days of design. This is a newish fair on the design calendar, but one which is really sort of motored along and has really positioned itself in a very unique way. It's taken a little bit of the air out of the room from Milan. It's become a proper challenger. Tell us what's happened there, and maybe why it has this real foundation now.
Well, because I think so. I guess we're going to talk about maybe the two major industry trade events for design in Europe. You're talking Salone del Mobile. That's been around since the 1960s. It's sort of a big trade fair in Milan. A large amount of business taking place out in a trade hall, and then an explosion of events across the city. In recent years, if I'm honest, it's kind of got a little bit out of control in Milan. We were both there earlier this year, but you see kind of everyone putting on events. I saw Kellogg's doing a Design Week event in Milan, and it's getting a little bit messy, a little bit noisy. There's not so much curation, even though it sort of brings in everyone from across the globe. Milan's almost got a little bit too crowded. Compare that with 3 days of design, which is a Copenhagen event. There's not a trade hall event or space, but there is a host of events held across the city. So people open up their showrooms, their galleries, and start to present work there. And the appeal for design brands and young designers has been in I guess having a little bit more room to present and show. I was talking to a designer earlier this week, and they were saying that it's 3 times cheaper for them to present their work in Copenhagen versus Milan. So if you've still got the world coming in, it's a little bit more affordable, it's a little bit more accessible. And it's a little bit of a party, if I'm perfectly honest, because it's spread across the city less so than in a trade hall. So all of these kind of factors are combining to, I guess, make this, some people are calling it the new Milan in design fair terms. So I think that's what's really making it really, really appealing.
And Nick, just how much of it is a Nordic affair versus it being properly global? Of course, you're in Copenhagen, you're in Denmark, a country, of course, which is much designed there, still much manufactured there, thankfully, as well. And then, of course, you've got the broader neighborhood. And, of course, big players from Sweden, from Finland and elsewhere. What is the balance? And I guess sort of how important, I guess the second part of this, how important is Nordic provenance to this? As you said, Milan is the big global number on the calendar. How much are people, do you think, going to Copenhagen also to have a sort of ascent of the region, if you like.
Well, Tyler, this is what I'm really excited about this week and what I think we're going to be able to pick up on a little bit. But for the first time, I mean, there's a couple of things going on here. Firstly, I've actually seen fewer and fewer Danish brands doing a big showcase or a big presentation in Milan. They're all holding their releases for Copenhagen, and I think that has strengthened 3 days of design as an event. It's become the place where if you're, and not even Danish brands, but Nordic brands generally, if you're a Nordic brand, you tend to now present at 3 days of design rather than Milan. Maybe you'll still have a little cocktail in Milan or something, but where you're showing and debuting your works for the first time, that's going to be in Copenhagen. The second thing I've observed, and my inbox is bursting with event invites, but this is the first time I'm sort of seeing Italian brands, I'm seeing German brands starting to invite me and yourself as well. We're going to have a big week of business and parties, but starting to invite us to events in Copenhagen for 3 days as a design. So this is the first time I'm actually really seeing a kind of doubling down from the Italians and Germans in Copenhagen. So I think it's shifting a little bit. I think brands are recognizing that people want to go to Copenhagen, and they're trying to respond and play into that.
Let's head to Helsinki right now. Our Petri Burtsoff is there. He calls himself our man in the Nordics. I guess that's true. Good morning, Petri.
Good morning, Tyler. I am in the Nordics, a little bit outside of Helsinki. I'm in the archipelago in a town of Tammisaari, about 1 hour from Helsinki, just setting everything up for midsummer next week. So I don't know about the Danes. Why would they, time their main design festival for the Nordic midsummer? It just doesn't make any sense. I'd love to go, but I would be facing immediate divorce if I skip the family over midsummer. So staying here.
Okay, well, I want to hear about the setup that it's going to take, whatever, 5 days that are involved. Maybe just your take on this, though, because, of course, later in the summer, moving into autumn, there is a Helsinki Design Week. Of course, Stockholm also has theirs. Nick, I'd love your view on this as well. But Petri, I'll start with you. Is there sort of a little bit of a, not quite a war, because, of course, you all have to get on, of course, now as NATO members, too, to see who has or who will sort of emerge being, the owner of course, the singular design fair, or is there room for everybody?
Well, for once, I'm going to try to be diplomatic. Regarding the Swedes and the Danes, I think there is room for everybody. And I think the background to this is that, Stockholm Design Week the furniture fair was for a long time the leading event in the Nordics for design and furniture. And then sort of the future of that is a little bit unsure at the moment. So Copenhagen emerged to take that spot. And then Helsinki has always been there in the background, and Helsinki Design Week and the Habitat Furniture Fair, they're sort of coexisted always, but they're still two separate events. So I think, one thing to do would be for them to sort of get their act together and start cooperating more and to sort of challenge Copenhagen in this. But Copenhagen at the moment, definitely number one spot.
Nick, of course, you do all of the fairs as well. Should everyone join forces, or do you still sort of need that sense of Finnishness, which is never going to maybe, of course, fully emerge if you're on Danish soil? Likewise, of course, if you're up in Stockholm.
I think there's a part of it that is, and actually Petri and I had an amazing time together at Helsinki Design Week last year, and Petri, I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. But I think there's something to be said about each sort of city leaning into what inherently makes it unique. And that was what I enjoyed so much about Helsinki Design Week. It felt very, very Finnish. And I think that's kind of beautiful. Maybe that was just topped off by the fact that I ended the day in the sauna every evening. But I think there's something to be said about we use the word competing a lot, but that maybe it should be complementing, and it's how can they kind of work together? How can you maybe, still have a Finnish presence in Copenhagen, but it's throwing forward to maybe what's going to happen in Helsinki in September. I think that, for me, is a much more interesting conversation. That being said, I do think Stockholm Design Week would do itself a service by moving out of February. I mean, who wants to go look at, beautiful furniture in the freezing cold? Not me.
Okay. Listen, Petri, you had a story for us, one of a mobility nature regarding my favorite two-wheel vehicle, e-scooters. And then the other one, of course, is more of a geopolitical topic, and it takes us back to Denmark. Why don't we start there?
Okay, let's start in Denmark. So Denmark has recently approved U.S. military bases on Danish soil. This, of course, is not not totally new. They made a similar deal with the Biden administration in 2023, but this is basically just expanding on that deal. And the critics of this deal say that Denmark is ceding sovereignty to the U.S. In a very difficult time in the Danish-U.S. relations. But then again, my take would be that this is clearly Denmark trying to appease Trump, saying that, you already have the full use of all of our land and bases, so maybe you can stop to talk about Greenland and just sort of look at the situation as it is. Because I'm not sure that Trump actually knows that, as the leading country in the NATO, he has free use of pretty much all of Greenland and the rest of the Denmark without having to actually annex those territories. So that's an interesting piece of news out of Denmark. And then the e-mobility. I know, Tyler. E-scooters are your mode of transport. That's how you move around Zurich, the Lake Zurich. I'm sure. So Finland has passed a new law whereby they start to first of all they set a minimum age of 15 for anybody to use e-scooters, which is a very commendable step already. But they can find the parents of underage drivers as well. They're reducing the speed of the e-scooters at night. They've a couple of years ago, they also made a law whereby you cannot just park these e-scooters everywhere. You have designated parking spots, and you cannot basically end the rental if you're not in one of those spots. They're also passing a law which requires you to wear helmets, and they're giving power to the municipalities to pass their own even stricter laws. So I really think Finland is leading the world into a brighter future in this respect.
This is absolute music to my ears. Very, very happy to hear there's e-scooter legislation on the horizon. Petri, just quickly, of course, as you said, it's midsummer is coming up, end of the week. This is the great demobilization of all of the Nordics. Everyone's going to be off for 4 weeks because no work really needs to be done at this time of year in Europe or the world as we know. What's on the cards at your? It's not a stuga, or maybe it is. But what's the setup going to be?
It's very much a stuga. So it's a family island. There's a couple of stuga or cabins for those of us who don't speak, those listeners who don't speak Swedish. So basically, all the families from different cabins gathering in a field in the center of the island. It's going to be a very Swedish tradition. So this is a Swedish-speaking island. We're going to put up the. I suppose the stone would be translated as a pole, I suppose, just decorating this beautiful pole, and somebody's going to be playing the harmonica. We're going to be dancing around. It's kind of like, I think if Nick Moniz was here, he would think that he's in the horror movie that came out a couple of years ago, because that's what my friends have said. But then it's going to be also just, enjoying good wine and sort of a little bit of sill, so a little bit of the herring and potatoes, and just relaxing, switching off, and then preparing for the holidays. Most Finns, as you said, it's going to be like the Italian Ferragosto, which is one weekend. We're going to do that for the whole month, so we're just going to be unreachable by phone or by email, not including me, Nick. I'm looking forward to those commissions, but everybody else in the country.
Sounds absolutely magical. Of course, the weather is going to be shocking, because it usually is, right? It wouldn't be sort of midsummer if it wasn't sort of 12 degrees and raining.
That's right. Yeah. We were just talking about it. Well, right now it's beautiful. It's like the official summer start weekend. It was plus 25 yesterday, and I'm just looking out at the terrace, and it's sunny again. So let's hope that this weather stays. But I remember a couple of years ago when it was actually colder on midsummer than it was on New Year's Eve. It was about 8 degrees, and it was almost snowing a little bit on the midsummer. So let's hope that we skip that experience this year and keep this sunny weather.
Petri Burtsoff, somewhere beyond the city limits of Helsinki. Thank you very much for that. Nick Moniz, our design editor in London. Stand by for 1 second. We're a little bit adrift. It's just coming up to 10:33, 9:33 in London. Emma Nelson is back there with the news headlines. Emma.
Thank you very much indeed, Tyler. Israel and Iran have launched fresh attacks on each other overnight, and talks which were due to be held today on Iran's nuclear program have been called off. Police in the US state of Minnesota are hunting for a gunman who shot dead a Democratic Party politician and her husband. The attacker also wounded 2 other people. India says it's inspecting all of its Boeing 787 Dreamliners. It's in response to Thursday's crash in Ahmedabad. For the first time, red Italian Frecciarossa trains will zip through the French countryside as the Italian operator Trenitalia launches 4 daily services between Paris and Marseille. And swimmers in Lake Zurich have been warned about a potentially dangerous mussel that could injure them. Warning signs about the Wandermuschel or zebra mussel have been appearing at bathing spots. The invasive species is brought in on the hulls of boats from the Black Sea. Last month, authorities inspected and sanctioned Zurichsee boat owners who hadn't scrubbed off the offending bivalves. The zebra mussel has become a major problem for lakes in the region, including those in Austria and Italy. Back to you, Tyler, in Zurich.
Okay, Emma, this is an important story. Nick, I need to bring you in because I think you even maybe witnessed part of this. I was on my way to Salone. I think it was 2 years ago. It was an early dip in the lake, and Emma, you're right, because there's been warnings, of course, at the start of the swimming season. Wherever you go, there are big signs up about it. You have to give your boat a proper scrub down before it is allowed in the lake. Of course, that makes sense here in Zurich and Switzerland. But anyway, they're really like razor clams. Because I was just getting out of the water, going up the ladder, and of course, many of these sort of mollusks had already started a little colony. And I think you don't think you saw it, Nick, but I almost cut my big toe off. So there you go.
That's not funny.
Be very, very careful in Lake Zurich. You want to jump in, Andrew Mueller?
I don't know why we're all laughing. That sounds genuinely terrifying.
And Nick, our client, she didn't even believe it because then I could have made the lunch, but anyway, I didn't get on the train.
Of anything foreign coming in and getting a scrub down before they go in the lake. So I was just imagining myself getting a scrub down from, I don't know, someone at the party. I don't know. That's where I was going with this.
Yeah, you'd have to pay extra for that.
Can I just say though, as a big fan myself, Emma, of the weird quirks of journalistic argot.
Yes.
That was an absolutely exemplary second mention there, as we call it in the trade, because you don't want to call the thing the same thing twice.
Exactly.
So you often end up making these desperate circumlocutions, and offending bivalve is one for the ages. Emma, congratulations.
There's nothing desperate about my writing, Andrew Mueller. Bivalve was an ambition.
Emma Nelson, you were of course here in Zurich earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Maybe tell our listeners if you haven't sort of recounted this enough already. Let's stay in Switzerland for a moment. Yeah. You led a little bit of a tour also, of course, with our Chris Lord as well, up the mountains, up Wengen Way. Who was there? What was the setting? What happened?
Well, before we go there, Andrew has just been, and talking to the great and the good of the military in Prague. I got the Wandermuschel story from the fact that I was at the Bardi on Friday and saw the sign and wondered what the hell that was. So there we go. So that's these sort of like gathering stories from where we go. I think Andrew's got a slightly higher scale than me. We went to a village called Wengen, and it's not easy to get to the Swiss Alpine village. And that's what makes it so special, actually, because when you land in Zurich Airport and you go down the escalator down to the train, there is this enormous advert over several stories for the Jungfraujoch, with the highest railway station in Europe. And then off you go. And this is what we did with a group of Monocle friends and patrons. And we took them to Wengen, to this incredible hotel called the Grand Hotel Belvedere. And Wengen is famous for lots and lots of reasons. It was the place where the slalom was invented, and it's a place where the downhill-only men's skiing club was invented, which was pulled together 100 years ago by a bunch of drunk men who decided that they were going to go down a really fast slope. So for a long, long time, Wengen has had a wonderful reputation as being a gorgeous, gorgeous, very impressive and beautiful resort. But its bloom had faded just a little bit. It had not really kept up as people had head off to Stade or Saint Moritz. And then this French company called Baumier's come in, and very intelligently and thoughtfully and carefully has restored 2 big Belle Epoque hotels, has brought them together and has created Wengen's first 5-star hotel. And they've done it in an incredibly thoughtful and sensitive way. The outside is is really the only thing that remains sort of not completely reconstructed. But inside, what they've done is they've recreated and restored all the original features of these beautiful Belle Epoque hotels. And so Monocle teamed up with Brûlé to bring together a really small bunch, and we looked at the hotel and we did the Globalist live from the hotel bar. I think that was the driest moment that bar had ever seen. And then we went up on a hike and we encountered some cows. And so we had that proper Swiss experience. And then it was just one of those wonderful things where you bring together lots of like-minded people in a place which really wants the world to know about it, but not in a very loud way. And it was a very wonderful couple of days.
Emma, just on that, of course, lovely gathering, all of those things. I believe you're in studio with Nick Moniz right now.
I am.
Nick, where were you? And I mean, we're talking about a place which has been magically restored, fantastic design. And we had our Chris Lord there.
I was
on your design patch. What happened?
I was in the beautiful Midwest of the United States. So I equally looking at some remarkable buildings. So I was in Minneapolis. I went to an amazing Frank Gehry art gallery there called the Weissman. Simply remarkable. I was doing my research. Also, some amazing Renzo piano buildings in Iowa. This is, and I'm not just trying to get you to pay for my flights so I can go do a story on this. But there is something to be said about amazing Pritzker Prize winning architects practicing in kind of the middle of nowhere, if I might say so myself. So I think there's a story in that. So I was doing my own research.
In-laws would like that, living in Minneapolis. But never mind.
I should be less vocal when I'm there about the fact that where are we? Anyway, I digress.
Nick Moniz, listen, I'm going to, I look forward to seeing you in Copenhagen in 2 days' time, hopefully fresh off the plane. We've got much to cover. It's 10:40 here in Zurich. We're going to go away for a very short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking all things art related, of course, yes, here in Zurich, but of course it is Art Basel week as well. Stay with us.
Seeking opportunities, bright ideas and daily analysis? Monocle.com's new look website has it all and plenty more we think you'll enjoy. For digital-only reporting, fresh opinion and the best from our global team of journalists, Monocle's new look website is just a click away. To access the online shop, subscribe or log into our revamped travel guides, head to monocle.com now.
And you are back with Monocle on Sunday with me, Tyler Brûlé. And of course, a very full table, a very full studio for here in Zurich as well. At the top of the program, of course, you heard from Aurelia Rauch from Bergos Bank, of course, one of our, of course, friends. Also sort of occasional art contributor as well. I'm also happy to say that Noah Horowitz is here, Chief Executive Officer, of course, at Art Basel. Good morning to both of you. Welcome. Very good to see you both here.
Hi, Tyler. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Let's start with you, Aurelia, just quickly. Of course, we've had this adjacency with Zurich. Zurich sort of a little bit sort of the red carpet on the way to Basel. It's sort of the runway. It's the approach. It's many things. What's happened over this weekend? What's happening today? And where does it position itself? Is it just because it's down the tracks, 50 minutes away from Basel? How's Zurich defining itself?
Well, I actually love to see my hometown flourish like this in these last few days, because I think rarely ever do you see Zurich so vibrantly. Really, everybody's out. The weather was on our side, definitely. Everything is kind of buzzing with this appetite for art, and it's just a lovely atmosphere, right? Never mind the wonderful art that you see. It's been shaping up for a few years, I would say, right? People just very naturally come through Zurich very often because they just simply fly in here before they then head to Basel. So it's always been sort of the natural thing for galleries here to whip up something special when everybody is already in town and kind of make use of that. And it's grown. It's grown quite a bit. I'm actually, you heard it here first, I'm on this kind of, mission to revamp this as the Swiss Art Week instead of this little weird divorce between Zurich and Basel. We should pull together.
No, listen, of course, we know there aren't any long haul connections into Basel. You have to come through here. I mean, I think there's cargo flights that go in, of course, with lots of fine art into Basel. Anyway, welcome. But yeah, just maybe your thought of are you only sort of perching through here? You're in front of the microphone because the coffee's good here, or why Zurich?
No, I mean, Zurich is a rite of passage for Art Basel. Before, I've been coming here for nearly 20 years, probably, for the Basel show. And and there's fantastic exhibitions on. The city comes to light. Yesterday evening was beautiful. Openings all throughout town, and clients of ours and others from all over the world through town here. So it's fantastic to see it thriving, and I think people will continue to be coming in throughout the week.
Is there any type of dialogue? Because we know, listen, these two cities, without art, have a complicated, tricky relationship. Is there any discussion to build a bridge, or you just leave it up to SBB? The train connects you, the highways connect you, and that's it? Or do you see that there is actually, this idea of actually sort of owning this week in Switzerland?
No, absolutely. There's a lot of dialogue. The Zurich Art Weekend, they're dotted on colleagues of ours in many ways, and the programming they put on is fantastic. And it's just great to see so many strong exhibitions, both on the contemporary side, fantastic Monster Chetwynd show just up the road from here, but also like Sophie Tauber, a legendary artist with Larkin Erdmann, and fantastic exhibitions. So these are real draws for our clients. They make the city pop, and the continuation of that is Basel this week.
Aurelia, maybe just tell us highlights for you here in Zurich, and then we'll look ahead, of course, to Basel. But you've been taking clients around, etc. What's stood out for you so far?
Well, we're kind of just exploring in a lot of ways, right? So maybe for hometown first, I was really quite taken with the Presenhuber show. They have a beautiful work of wall works specifically. Me and my colleague Marie were touring this, and both agreed, wonderful work to see there. Huge fans of Ugo Rondinone, also very excited to see those works come to life a little bit more at the fair later the week. Hauser&wirth always brings wonderful blue chip art. The Ed Clark show, I think, was just stunning. Really, to see the work in this density was wonderful. Very, very enriching show to see. And next week, I'm particularly excited to see the Katharina Grosse work up front at the Messeplatz. That's going to be great. Huge fan of Dan Bo's too. I think there's going to be a lot of works by him. And Julien Charrière definitely having a moment. Swiss artist. Marie and I talked about it extensively. Again, my colleague, who we agree, just a really wonderful artist to watch. Very interesting works. Also going to be a museum show about his work. So I think that's a couple of highlights for me. The rest we'll see.
No, I'm curious to maybe just before we even make our way to Basel, maybe we should, and we've, of course, much of this program at the start has been defined by the Middle East. Why don't we jump to Qatar and to Doha? Some people might have missed it. Hard to miss. Big sponsorships, a big move, but maybe just tell us what this means, where it's going to fit into your calendar as well.
Yeah, so for those that didn't already hear the news, we announced about a month ago Art Basel Qatar. Which has, by the way, led people here to start calling Art Basel in Basel, Art Basel Switzerland, to your point a moment ago. It's the first of our shows not named for a city. This is, our fifth pillar. It's the first foray into the MENA region, and we're, extraordinarily excited. It will launch in February next year. So rather quick schedule, but it's been a long time coming. The work that Qatar museums have done on the ground there, they celebrate 20 years this fall, is extraordinary. The go-forward plan is beyond ambitious. And I think for Art Basel, but for the art world writ large, this is an extraordinarily exciting moment, a long time coming. The creative scene in Qatar, but also throughout the region, is thriving. And we look forward to putting our toes in and building, very exciting future. It's a long-term play as well. It's going to take some time to build the market to the same extent it is here. And we see these extraordinary collections in Europe, the US, but there's unbelievable collections being built and real ambition and fortitude and a vision.
When you mention the region, how much of this is, do you almost sort of build a very sort of easy front door? So, of course, you think about proximity to India, of course, to the GCC, of course, to Saudi. How much of that is really about just saying it's not about then having to fly 8 or 9 hours to cross the world, but this is anywhere from a 30-minute flight to a 90-minute flight, and just seeing the ease of that. Is that part of that play, just knowing, of course, the scale of the market that's on Doha, on Qatar's doorstep?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a rising tide lifts all boats phenomena. So we fully anticipate our audiences coming in, but also hopping through the region, whether to Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, over to India. I mean, the connections are and commitment between Qatar and India is very strong. So I think that's a super important market. But Central Asia, North Africa, it's a very important part of the world for many reasons. And it's a place where the market is yet to catch up, but I think that there's a lot of art-loving audiences that will come across this, and Doha in particular, is a very exciting city right now. There's a lot of institutions coming up, and more in the future for sure.
Aurelia, you're of course dealing with clients from the bank all the time, and of course, yes, you're shuttling them around. Maybe not shuttling them around. You're escorting them around various fairs around the world, and not just, of course, under the Art Basel banner. A move to Qatar, from your perspective as well, is this sort of about ease, or do you think there's just much more to be unlocked there as well when you think regionally?
Well, I think that very generally this art fair, and particularly Art Basel, and maybe only second by Frieze, has just been very magnetic. So it seems like wherever you guys go, a lot of other things follow, for the good or the worse, because obviously it also becomes this magnet for so many fairs that you feel you can't even do them all anymore. So I feel strongly about the region. I'm not an expert in it by any way, but I think, it's a good new point which will build out a lot of magnetism for the area, for sure.
I think it would be irresponsible. You've got two gentlemen over here who are on a geopolitical watch. Of course, we started this program, and much of this program has been defined what is happening in the region. To both of you, Noah, really, how much of a conversation is there right now, or do you feel a certain, just what's the mood in terms of course, people out to purchase and just sort of the sentiment right now? Aurelia, I'll start with you.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is a very important question at the moment. And I think there's these very conflicting voices. Some say that the art market is extremely stable. I actually would love to hear Noah's take on this too. And it has, through crises and through moments of severe turmoil globally, has proven to stay quite up and even, have a tendency to go up. Never mind the importance of voices of the artists, and especially in troubling times. I think we don't need to have that emotional conversation. That is, I think, quite clear to many people. But from a market perspective, listen, it's always, if there is a lot of, kind of turmoil and a lot of insecurity, of course, people are in a holding pattern often, right? Especially for bigger purchases, which is absolutely understandable. And I think, they're not necessarily a holding pattern yet, but I think people are getting a little bit more careful. Also, what you have to say, and again, Nora, I would love to hear your take on this, is that there's so much art at the moment. If you're buying in a certain price bracket, you feel like you're almost drowning in new possibilities. So, maybe there's a little bit more hesitation to go right at it and make a lot of purchases that hover around, the very low end of the art market, which is still a lot of money. Noah, what do you think about that?
No, not to put you on the spot, Noah, but anyway, there you go. The floor is yours.
I'm going to be on the spot all week. So today
probably.
Is a nice warm-up.
Yeah, it is.
Look, the art market is down. It's been 2 years, down 12%. Last year, a little less than that the year before. But we're also not at 08-09 levels where the market cratered by about 40%. We're not in the late 80s where the market cratered and really took, the better part of a full decade to rebuild itself. It's a very global market. We're seeing galleries that are, really repositioning a lot of artists. I mean, you mentioned Ed Clark a moment ago. I think it's a brilliant example. Even Eva Preisenhuber's show of Franz West is a beautiful repositioning of an iconic European artist. Right. So I think galleries that are working with artists to tell stories, to source work that hasn't been on the market will be rewarded. We expect a lot of that to pop up in booths this week. There's a lot of discussion in our industry of the overwrought nature of information, all these emails and checklists that go out. I think we're seeing more and more galleries not tell their clients what they're bringing. Emmanuel Dodonna did tell the audience that on the weekend about his Carrington pieces, so repositioning. Again, artists that are somewhat underrepresented in the market, female surrealists, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there is a lot out there, but the market is a little slower at the same time. So I think it's about recalibration. But I think what's beautiful about Art Basel generally, and here in Switzerland particularly, is the belief and trust that our clients have in the platform, that the work that they're seeing is extraordinary, and I think the market will reward that.
And maybe just to both of you, we always like to look over the horizon. We always like to look for the bright spots. Are you seeing any corners of the world, either on the side of the exhibitors, so people coming from new cities, of course, new galleries coming in, but also maybe buyers? We of course, we sort of looked at the Korean boom. We've looked at sort of what's happened in other parts of the world where you see, of course, a new generation or just a new geographical pocket coming in. What are you seeing, Aurelia?
Well, for client side, since we're a Swiss private bank working mainly with clients here, hard for me to judge at this point. Would have to actually pass this on to Noah quite a bit. But in terms of galleries and focus, maybe, certainly still art, sort of the demetropolization of art a lot, right? We have a lot of people that have worked. I mean, Noah mentioned few artists that were overlooked and now are coming more to the forefront. We're definitely seeing this sort of in Brazil, southern parts of America, of course, Africa. Very, very important. There's art fairs popping up specifically about art from Africa. So yeah, I think it's not so much anymore LA, New York, and so on, but that's been going on for a while. But we still, I think, seeing this trend.
No, and just in terms of where you have new galleries coming from, but also and any sort of early indicators, of course, where potential collectors are coming from.
Well, we've seen an uptick year on year from collectors pre-registering coming from Asia, which is really interesting. And I think it's a nice indication, actually, of what those commitments of putting our feet in the water in these different markets can do in time. Japan is a very interesting market. We're seeing there are 2 new galleries from Japan in the fair in Basel this year. They bring their clients, their audiences. Clearly, the Middle East, is a big and interesting region for all obvious reasons. But we're seeing more and more of the institutions coming across our shows, and within Europe, younger and younger people coming to the market. This is a very important thing, and we see that even last year, despite the downturn in sales by value, there was a resurgence actually in artwork sub $50,000, sub $100,000, and there's a younger generation in their 30s, 40s, even younger in many cases, that are now actively buying and entering the market.
Quickly, just before we go, Aurelia, one pick, or just one that you're really excited about that you haven't touched on with Art Basel, and that can be cocktails on a terrace, or it can also be going to a booth as well.
Well, between the raclette that is always happening at 30 degrees heat in the center of the fair, Lister, I'm excited to see Lister this year. It's a younger fair, and there's always interesting stuff there.
And I know that, of course, you have to be somewhat unbiased, Noah, as well. But if you could maybe just point out one highlight that's really sort of stand out, because of course it's busy, it's noisy, there's a lot going on. What's a not to be missed?
Well, I think the Atelier van Lieshout, this giant winding sculpture, that's comprised of, dozens or over 150 individual sculptures, is going to be a real standout and unlimited, as will Felix Gonzalez's Torres's Untitled Go-Go Dancer, which is an iconic work from the early 90s. So really, really excited. Last plug for Art Basel Awards, which we're really excited about as well, which is an entirely new platform to recognize excellence, and will be popping up their first event in Basel this week.
And announcement by what day?
Sorry?
I mean, just this makes its premiere on what day?
On Thursday evening.
Okay, very good. Noah Horowitz, CEO of Art Basel, Aurelia Rauch from Bergos Bank. Very good to have both of you here. I'm still here also with Chris Cermak, our senior news editor, also Andrew Mueller, host of the Foreign Desk. Gentlemen, you're going to be in Zurich throughout the week. We're going to be popping in to Basel as well. We'll be doing some live crosses, of course, to our correspondent who's going to be over there throughout the week. But tell us maybe just some other highlights. I mean, of course, that is part of the reason why we're anchoring out of here. Chris, I'll start with you. It's a bit of a continental 2 weeks, in fact, because we're anchoring out of Zurich all week. Globalist will still come from London. Then we jump to Paris next week as well. We'll be from Paris all next week. But I believe Emma Nelson, I think you're going to be manning that. But Chris, tell us first, just quickly, what do we have happening?
It is a continental 2 weeks, and what I love is I think over the next week we're really going to showcase both the fact that we are here in Zurich, and we're going to bring people into the studio here, including some of our favorites like Benno Zog will be coming back, used to be very much regular on this show from the Department of Defense. We're going to speak to lots of people here in Zurich, but then we're going to do these crosses because everyone is in all these interesting places. Sophie Monahan-Coombs is going to be at Art Basel. Our culture editor Simon Bouvier is going to be at the Paris air show that's starting tomorrow as well. So we're going to be crossing to him. We'll have 3 days of design with you and Nick Moniz. We're going to have Andrew Tuck and Carlotta Rebello at the Abu Dhabi Infrastructure Summit as well. So we're also going to speak to people in the US. HJ Mai was at the US military, the Army parade on Saturday and covering the protests. So we're going to speak to him. So I think we're really going to showcase both the fact that we can anchor something. It's nice to be here in Zurich, but then go to these crosses of all the different types of people we have.
Andrew Mueller.
Well, yeah, just in terms of current affairs, to go a bit back to where we came in at the top of the show, Tyler, I'm just concerned with how we're going to fill up all this programming when there's such a quiet news landscape.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
nothing to talk about geopolitically.
Very little going on. I don't envy you your job, Chris, trying to pad out the running order.
I didn't even mention any of the Iran-Israel stuff when I was talking about that. We'll fit it in somewhere.
Yeah, I think everyone is going to be poised. We're going to have to leave it there. Chris Cermak, Andrew Mueller, Emma Nelson back in London, also Nick Moniz, Petri Burtsoff, Noah Horowitz, and also Aurelia Rauch. Our producers today, Desiree Banley, Emma Nelson, and Mariella Bevan, our studio manager in Zurich. Of course, Desiree again, and also Mariella Bevan has also been looking after the sound for us in London. I'm Tyler Brûlé. Where am I next week? I believe I am going to be talking to you from somewhere in the south of France. Anyway, have a good week. Bye-bye.